the stuff I had to talk about today is the first I wanted to talk about Veterans Day. It's almost the end of it now, obviously, but yeah, what a great day. I think that veterans are awesome people. Now, I'm sure you've been hearing it all day. If you're on social media or anything, everyone's been reminding you. And hopefully if you watched any sporting events or things of that nature or anything on television, people have been talking about it as well. So that's a good thing. I think it's good to honor our veterans. But I think that there's more than just honoring them one day a year and just, if you see someone in public telling them you're proud of their service, which I do think that's important, and that could change an individual vet's day. I'm sure it feels great to have people let you know how thankful they are. So, but I think that we need to go a step further than that. I used to be more cynical, right? Like I had this problem of how do you honor veterans if you don't like the wars that they're fighting in currently at the time? And for example, I was against the Iraq War. I was against interventions in Libya, Afghanistan, things of that nature. So, it seems at first glance difficult to honor the troops that are over there, but still dislike the fact that they're over there in the first place. But it's easy once you're not a naive child like I was, it's easy to just realize that it's not their fault at all, right? Like it's constantly the people that send them there. If it was up to these soldiers, I'm sure they'd be rather at home, protecting the country at home and things of that nature instead of having these expansive wars. But the nature of signing up for the military is you have to do what's ordered. So it was easy for me to then understand that you can honor the soldiers, honor veterans, and still dislike some of the wars that they go to and things of that nature. And even aside from those wars, the military, even in today's day and age, is still massively important to us, right? It's important for our defense. It's important to project democracy and our values across the world. I don't mean it's like a kind of a soft power thing, right? Like you don't have to be going over there with guns to get your point across. The fact that countries know that you could theoretically you have a mighty military, hopefully is enough to be a deterrent where you won't ever have to use it. So there's that level of it. I think, though, that the way I try to honor the troops is what I would do, what I argue for and try to discuss to people like maybe on this channel or before this channel with people that just I'm talking to in real life or on other websites like Above Top Secret that I'm on or something like that. And that is, I think the best way to honor the troops is to encourage policies and vote for policies that will stop them being sent to all these ridiculous situations, right? Like we think of Veterans Day, it's easy to think of like World War I and II or Vietnam and these 1 and 2. Let's stick with that, for example. And like the wars prior to that, like it's easy to think of like the importance of that, the heroism. Now, obviously, we know that in other wars, regardless of what it was, Vietnam, Afghanistan, Iraq, there's heroism and stuff as well. But we tend to talk about the horrors of like those wars, trench warfare in World War I and like the Holocaust in World War II and all the terrible stuff they saw. But I think there's a unique we're seeing something that's kind of unique with soldiers of my generation or younger, which have fought in Afghanistan, Iraq, and places like that. They're now kind of not just soldiers, they're also trainers, right? So, for example, take Afghanistan. If you're a soldier that's sent over there, you have to train the people of Afghanistan that are theoretically going to fight Al-Qaeda or whatever terrorist group after you leave. That was the idea. Now, what's it, over 10 years, we're still there. It's way more than that, right? Like 15 years or something, we're still in Afghanistan. But one of the unique horrors of that situation, I think, is you're training people during the day that very well may be your enemy at night. And like when we talk about things like PTSD and things of that nature, I can't imagine the mental toll that just fighting in a war would take. Anyone who's ever done that or that signed up and that could be a possibility is a better person than me. Like that's incredible courage and strength to be willing to do something like that. But then on top of that, right, is the idea that like at least like in World War I and World War II, you had the idea of your allies were your allies, right? Now, the way warfare is fought, you could be training someone who's secretly at night going back and working for Al-Qaeda and things of that nature, which makes it even worse. So I think that we need to remember that. And when we think of the veterans, think of like how terrible those situations were. Even if they weren't injured in combat or ever saw combat, like they signed up for that. And that's something that could have happened. Now, one caveat, that doesn't mean that like someone who's a soldier can't be a jerk in real life. Like, yeah, I've known people like that too, but you still honor the service that they had. And cynical people say, oh, they did it for money or they did it for status or this and that. It doesn't matter. They did something that I wasn't capable of doing and I didn't have the courage to do, and so that should be commended, and I do commend that. But again, I think the best way to commend that is to be able to say that you need to do stuff in your real life to support like people, such as going out and meeting veterans that you might know and letting them know how important their service was, helping them if they need help, just letting them talk to you if they need that, supporting organizations that help veterans and things of that nature. And even if you can't do any of that, which you probably are able to do at least some of that, because a lot of that doesn't require any money. But even aside from all of that, I think as a policy, we should vote for people that seek to bring those troops home. The nature of military conflicts are far different than it used to be, right? It seems that we're making this huge mistake where every year we say we need to invest more money in the military. And when they talk about, you'll sometimes hear this misnomer. It's a very clever trick that is played, right? Well, they'll say like, oh, Obama cut military spending by 20%. He didn't actually cut the amount he gave to the military. He cut the increase that he was going to give them by 20%, right? Now, this seems like an odd thing to be talking about in Veterans Day, because it's like, is Rob really saying we should give the military less money? But you have to understand, a lot of that money is going to like all kinds of things. It's not our veterans, right? It's going to frivolous stuff for overseas base, things of that nature, defense contractors that are just wasting money and things like that. The real way to honor the troops and the veterans is to have them become a defense force in our country. Don't have them be stationed in places like Afghanistan or other terrible areas of the world. I think that we vastly overestimate that we need troops on the ground in these areas anymore. We shouldn't be getting involved in these conflicts, right? You can't force democracy on people. We should have a more mobile, strategically targeting military that's targeted for going and fighting terrorism and things like that, and then is robust enough to take on any challengers that we might need in a conventional war. But conventional wars are going to be few and far between going here on out. One, because we have such devastating things such as nuclear weapons and things of that nature, and other terrible weapons of mass destruction that may come about. So I think that if there were conventional wars, that escalation would be so great a fear that we're actually going to see less conventional wars. They're going to be more proxy wars like we see in Syria, where maybe Russia's backing Assad and we're backing the innocent rebels that are really just Al-Qaeda and Al-Nusra, ISIS, and other groups, which I could go on all day about that. But that's not really the point I was trying to get to here. So as a politician or as a voter, I'm trying to vote and project policies that would bring the troops home, have the troops be robust, ready to, we can still be stationed in some countries, but we should get rid of the majority of overseas bases we have, and we would be able to save money, tons of money, and cut spending, and actually put more money into the actual troops as opposed to giving it to defense contractors and things of that nature. I don't know this, but I think that if I was a veteran or a troop, particularly if I'm still active duty, I would be more thankful to politicians and people that said, we respect you so much, what you do is an awesome thing, but we think you should be at home, you should be training here, you should be learning to be mobile, and if you have to travel overseas to complete some mission, you do it and then you come back, as opposed to you're going to be stationed in these places for years on end, right? I think that they would appreciate that as more supporting the veterans, as opposed to just giving them a big thumbs up one day a year and then forgetting about it. And meanwhile, we stay in Afghanistan for 15 years or Iraq or who knows where else that we have soldiers across. So that is, that's what I feel on Veterans Day. I also think that, it's an absolute shame that two groups that, forget the second group, but it's an absolute shame how we treat veterans in the sense that, they still have terrible health care when they get back. Everybody knows the statistics. I'm sure you've heard them today. More veterans end up dying home for things like suicide and mental health reasons and things like that than do in conflict overseas. And that's a terrible tragedy and disservice. We should be not just spending more money, right? Like, I think that that's a huge problem that we get into politically, where we're always just like, throw more money at the problem. But in reality, there's tons of things we could be doing. And it starts with all of us as individuals caring enough to worry about it and be concerned about it every day, as opposed to just one day a year, and start to demand change and get people in there that will actually have physical change. I think that that's one of the best things we could do. But hopefully if nothing else tonight, you only got 50 minutes left. Just think about how lucky we are that we had veterans that fought, that made our lives possible, and made this the greatest country in the world. And just if you know any veterans, let them know. Even if you didn't today, let them know that you're thankful. And don't just stop there, though. Do what you can to keep going further than that. So that's my spiel on Veterans Day. I went to Applebee's today. They were giving veterans free meals, so that was fantastic. Saw a lot there. It was really cool. And I watched Pittsburgh Penguins game last night where they honored a bunch of veterans. It was cool to see as well. So, yeah, I thought it was pretty cool. So,